Hi, I'm Katie Geiger, and in the last video I did about language, it was about how we can support children when they are doing positive behaviors, and we want to strengthen that behavior. We want that behavior, whether it's in terms of cognitive learning or the behaviors in the family, we want that positive behavior to continue and to be strong, and we can build on that. And that was all about noticing behavior, the noticing language that we would use to strengthen that behavior. This video has a little different slant. That other one was about supporting. This one is about trusting. Trusting that they know some things about cleaning their room, that they know some things about brushing their teeth, that they know some things about books, that they know some things about math. And here's what that language would look like. Say, for instance, it's time to get ready for bed. This kind of trust language would sound like this. In 5 minutes, it's going to be time to start getting ready for bed. What are some things you remember about getting ready for bed? What are some things we do? Or, we're getting ready to get in the car. What are some things you need to remember to bring with you? I'm trusting that they are going to remember some of those things. I'm trusting their memory and their ability to recall. Might they forget a few items? Sure. But I'm going to be able to follow that up with a noticing language. Here's an example. We're getting ready to get in the car. What do you remember about things we need to do to be ready to go? And if the child says, put on my shoes, put on my coat, I'm going to say the noticing, yes, you will need to do those two things, and also get to the bathroom before we go. So I've trusted that they remembered some of that, and I also supplied another very important thing to do before we leave the house. Before we play a board game together, what do you remember about being a good sport? Before we clean up the kitchen, what are the things you remember about clearing off the table? Before we go for a walk together, what do you remember about the street and the sidewalk? Before we get ready to go to the park, what do you remember about sharing the playground equipment? What are some words that we can say that we've practiced? I know that things are going to go wrong. The kids are going to make mistakes. I don't want them darting out into the street. I want them to be able to stay safe on the sidewalk. I want them to be able to enjoy the playground equipment with other children. And so I want to set them up for success by being proactive about that. What do you remember? Sometimes it's helpful if you create a checklist together. So a checklist might be something like this. This is one about setting the table. You can see I've put some primitive illustrations, some primitive drawings next to it. You don't have to put those illustrations, but I think it's helpful for kids if you do. And if you create this together, then it has even more strength with it. You can see there are all these blank lines. It's a checklist. So when they've done that particular thing, they can get a marker or a crayon and check it off that they have done that one. That's one example. When you create your checklists, you might have some of these same things, or you might have different things. In this one about cleaning the teeth, I tried to be very specific, even to the point about putting the lid back on that toothpaste and then show me that smile since it's all cleaned up. I want it to be fun for them. The same with washing hands. I've tried to be very specific about getting between the fingers and around the nails. And you can even put a little nail scrubbing brush by the sink if that is helpful for them and for you. You know they just get their hands into everything. The dirt is always under those nails. We want them outside digging in the dirt. So this checklist to help them be independent with that. The getting ready checklist. Start with your underwear. Put that clean underwear on first. And then all these other parts so that they can be independent. And again, pictures would really help with this. You know, these checklists are helpful. They are wonderful for children. Where are we going to keep them so that we're not searching for them. If this is the getting ready checklist, maybe it's taped to the dresser, or maybe it's taped to the door. Maybe this hand washing one is in every bathroom in the house, right next to the mirror. And the same for the teeth cleaning. Maybe the setting the table checklist goes on the side of the refrigerator, or is taped to one of the base cabinets so that they can see it themselves. If you have older children in school, this homework checklist, you can put on here what you know that they will need in order to be successful. Maybe your bedtime routine is specific to your family. Put on what works for your family. And the same for the clean room checklist. Do what works for your family, and then put it where everybody can find it. At some point you won't need this checklist, but I want you to know that doctors and surgeons have checklists in the operating room just to be sure. It's a help for us and a help for them. You know, in the last video, and I'm going to bring this up again in this video, this idea, this concept that this is not just for your 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 7-year-old, 9-year-old. This is to help us to raise teenagers and young adults. This is to help us support and trust our young children as we live with them in their young years, so that we can enjoy their company and they can have that confidence. They can have that independence. They can have that sense of community. The community of their family, the community in their school, the community at large. And if you want to know more about that, you can look up Madeline Swift's website. Her name is Madeline Swift. She has lots of information about gaining cooperation and helping children to become independent. So what have you learned? You have learned the phrase, what do you remember about? What do you remember about playing with water? What do you remember about playing in the sand? What do you remember about bedtime routines? Trusting that they remember. What do you remember? You have learned that creating a checklist might be helpful for you and them. And you have learned or been reminded to keep that future teenager in mind. They're little now. They are soaking it all up. Every word we say, every tone of voice, every mannerism, they are soaking it up. So what is it that we want to offer them? Some trust that they do remember these